Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans number 27. I'm Fred Green. This week we respond to one of the very first listener requests on Golf Smarter to speak with someone's teacher. Mike Wilkerson is a former Australian tour player and is still teaching in the Pacific Northwest. In this conversation, Mike and I discuss strategies and tips on the importance of your game from 100 yards and in. Golf Smarter Mulligans is supported by twoguyswithgolfballs.com, offering premium used golf balls at a fraction of the cost of new balls. New balls? What's the point? You're going to lose them, right? So why are you paying $4 a ball, $3 a ball? And why are you playing with balls that you found and you don't even know what you're playing with from one round to the next? Don't you think that you should be playing with balls that you have some faith in? And, you should be playing the same type of ball every time to add to your consistency. So, go to twoguyswithgolfballs.com and find the ball that you love, pay almost half, if not less than half of the normal price of balls, and then use Golf Smarter at checkout for an additional 10% off every order, every time. And that's at twoguyswithgolfballs.com, and that discount offer expires April 1, 2020. Mulligans is also brought to you by Autoslash.com. Autoslash is the rental car booking hack that will save you time, money, and a lot of hassle. Autoslash.com applies every available coupon code to your next car rental, including coupons you're eligible for based on your various memberships. Then they track your reservation until the day you pick up the car and email you when they find a better rate. And they do that regularly. The average user saves 30% off from any other booking site. And Autoslash is completely free. So bookmark it now in your browser and use it for your next car rental. Autoslash.com. AUTOSLASH. Autoslash.com. Welcome, Mike.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Before we get started, I want you to know that we had a request from a listener who's one of your students who wanted you to be on the Golf Smarter podcast, and this is what he had to say.
Hi, I'm Randy Shields from Castle Rock, Washington. My wife and I are taking lessons from Mike Wilkerson, Director of Instruction at Tri-Mountain Golf Course in Ridgefield. And he's a very exuberant teacher, very into it. If Mike thinks you're not doing it quite right, he will reach over and readjust your hands, your butt, your back, whatever. And it's man, woman, whatever. He's very enthusiastic about what he does.
And
it makes you feel comfortable.
How long have you been taking lessons with him?
About 3 weeks.
Okay. And have you been seeing some improvement already?
You bet. And my wife is definitely seeing the improvement.
Well, thank you.
You know Randy and his wife, right?
Yes.
How they doing?
They're doing fine.
Now, Mike, you teach both at Tri-Mountain Golf Club in Ridgefield, Washington, but you also teach on a simulator at a retail location, right?
Yes.
What's the difference of teaching between teaching out on the green grass and teaching with a simulator for you?
Well, I think the simulator is really good for full swing, whereas I haven't done a lot of short game stuff on the simulator because I do all that up at Tri-Mountain. But I think there's advantages to both.
And what would that be?
Well, the simulator gives us a lot of the stats and the spin rate, launch angle we're looking for nowadays when we fit drivers. Also, it keeps stats of previous shots, and they're over in the corner of the screen, so I can let the student hit balls and they can see their pattern before the lesson, and then once we fix something, it shows up there.
Is that data valuable in teaching as well as in learning? Does that really change the way teaching is done?
I think it's more just the info. Some people they need to see numbers and stuff more than just seeing the ball fly.
Mm-hmm.
Each student's different. Some are more into numbers, some are more in the feel. So I think that's good for some people, and I think it's really good as far as fitting drivers nowadays.
Is that
the numbers?
And getting fitted for a driver, you think you shouldn't just go in and pull a driver off the shelf saying, I like the look of this, I'm going to buy it. You think getting fitted is valuable?
Oh, nowadays, yes. Because they can fit a driver to your swing. Whereas in the old days, it was you'd just keep trying them until you found the one that fit your swing. Because, yeah, it's all based on launch and spin rate now. So I've really taken a couple of my students in there and gained them 20 to 40 yards just because they had the wrong driver.
Wow.
Without changing the swing or anything.
Because I know one of the local retail stores by me, they'll give you the 90 days to go out and play with it, and they'll give you an in-store trade. And you know, you go out and play, you see how it feels and what kind of ball flight. But you're saying you're going to get more information if you can be on a launch monitor and get fitted in the store and learn more about each driver than taking it out on the course for a while.
Well, I would, get fit on the monitor and then take it to the course.
Sure.
I think that's the ultimate.
Sure.
You know, because my swing's never the same in a simulator as it is on a golf course.
Why is that?
Oh, just tempo, timing. You know, I think we speed up a little on the golf course. I think everybody does.
Oh.
And then I think at the range or in a simulator, you could start swinging too hard because you're looking at the numbers and, you know, swinging several drivers in a row.
Oh, that's really a valuable point, and valid too. That you probably are comparing, your own competitive nature. You're going to try to beat yourself with each one.
Especially if you're seeing it right there.
Yeah, exactly.
On a golf course, unless you're pacing it off and minus and trying to figure out how far each drive went, you really wouldn't know that.
Yeah. Well, the thing I wanted to concentrate on our discussion today is playing at 100 yards and in.
Yes.
And how we can improve our game and lower our score, because I would really think, you know, we're talking about drivers and trying to get as much distance as possible, but that's not where the scoring is done.
Right. A good drive does not make you a par.
That's correct. Even a bad drive doesn't make you a par, but you can get one.
But if you make a good putt, you can make a par. A good chip, you can make a par.
Good chip,
or good iron.
A good chip can get you a birdie too. Right?
Yeah.
So let's focus on that a bit. In your instruction, where do you begin on how to improve your game at 100 yards in? And let me ask you this: is it 100 yards in or 150 yards and in?
Well, I go 100 and in.
Okay.
Because some of those 75, 60, those aren't even full swings.
Right.
So most under 100-yard shots are not even full swings, especially for men.
Right.
And then I've been keeping stats here on my own, probably for 5 or 6 years, just on my own scores. And it's amazing that tee to green or to that 100 yards, that works out, especially over several rounds. I average the same number of fairways, same number of greens. Sure, some days it's better, some days it's worse, but on an average, that doesn't change. And my score is based on what I do inside 100 yards.
Let's talk about the statistics that you keep.
Well, I keep, every time I play, I keep my score.
Mm-hmm, of course.
That. And then I keep my number of putts per hole. And the only time we count those is on the green, once you're on the green.
So on the fringe is not a putt?
No, that's where we count. The only other stat I keep is that 100 yards and in.
On the fringe, it counts as your 100 yards and in. Okay, good.
Yeah. So that 100 yards and in counts every stroke inside 100 yards, including putt. And I just have that as another separate score.
And tell me what you're learning from it, how you're learning, and how much detail you keep with each statistic that you have. Are you talking about which club you're using and the distance, or just, okay, so from 100 yards in, I took 2 strokes?
Just a total, yeah. And every time I make a 2 inside 100 yards, that usually relates to a par. And every time I make a 3 inside 100 yards, I just make a bogey. And every time I make 4, I look down my score, and it's a double bogey.
But now I'm lost. So your 100 yards and in does not count your putts?
No, it does.
Oh, it does count your putts. Okay.
Every stroke you're taking.
Every stroke you're taking. I got it now. Oh, okay. So you're hoping to be on in regulation. So.
Well, not even if you're not on in regulation. Say you're just off the green. You chip it on one putt, that's a 2 inside 100 yards.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about some drills. Let's talk about some ways to increase your consistency from 100 yards and in.
Okay. Well, the first thing I believe is adding it up and seeing what percent of your score is spent there, so that you know how much time of your practice needs to be spent there. For me, 56% of my shots when I play are under 100 yards. So 56% of my practice time should be spent on that. Whereas most people are going to be a lot higher. I'm really good inside 100 yards, but most people, that's going to be 60 to 70% of their score.
How does that translate to what they do on the tour?
I'm real close. Tour guys, where's my stats? They're not as good as people think. Like I only average 8.4 fairways around out of 14. I think the tour's right at 9. I only average 11.3 greens per round. And the tour's right at 11 or 12. And I average right around 29 putts around, which is 29 is what the average on the tour is also.
Okay.
And I also keep up and down with, if I miss a green in regulation, if I hit 10 greens that day, I go back on the 8 I missed, and I want to know how many of those I got up and down for par. That's another stat I keep. And I'm right around 64% getting up and down on the green I miss. Which, when I first started keeping that stat, was like 40%. And then once I started keeping track of that, I try a little harder when I have to look at those stats and the numbers at the end of the round. So, and then inside 100 yards, I average 40.6. So about 2.25 a hole, which most people are probably 3.5 and up per hole inside 100. Tour guys, they don't hit as many greens as people think and as many fairways. It's just they always have low putts and they get the ball up and down, which is where I think you have fun in golf.
Is the up and down.
Just being able to save yourself after hitting a bad shot.
Right.
Not paying for it.
Yeah. What motivated you to start keeping those statistics?
Well, when I taught at a range, I usually get people hitting the ball good enough to break 90 within a lesson or two. And then they keep coming back to me telling me the scores they were shooting, and it just didn't make sense to me. So finally I decided to start playing with my students. And once I got out there on the golf course with them, I found out it was this 100 yards and in, where even though I got them hitting it well, that doesn't put a good score on the board for you.
Mike, I gotta stop you there. You're saying that within a lesson or two, most of your students are breaking 90?
No, they're hitting it well enough to break 90.
I was thinking you should be making as much money as Tiger with that kind of statistic.
If they could putt and chip.
I see.
But that's what takes time. You need to spend time putting and chipping to build an imagination around the green, which is how high the ball has to go and where it has to land to roll down to the hole. And, I mean, really the only way to gain that is to go out and hit chips and hit putts and get a feel for that. Whereas a lot of people, they spend their time hitting full shots. You know, they go to the range and spend 90% of those balls over 100 yards.
I find it very difficult to take half shots or three-quarter shots. My tempo changes dramatically, and my body movement seems to change radically when I don't get a full shot in. How can I correct that? What I do for the non-full shots is limit the length of my backswing, but keep my full finish, full follow-through. Whereas most people are taking the club too far back and then not following through. They're decelerating?
They're decelerating, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you swing to your full finish, I don't see how you can decelerate. At least through the hitting zone.
How do I keep from speeding up, though? My tempo seems to change when I'm trying to do that.
Practice. I mean, a majority of if I ever hit balls, which I don't hit a lot of golf balls, but if I ever do, it's the 50, 75-yard shot. You know, where I'm taking it like halfway back and then full finish. Mm-hmm. And just working on tightening up my backswing. That's where I seem to get in trouble. It was getting too long in my backswing, and so hit shots really helps me. Plus, those are your scoring shots. You know, I think you learn a lot about your full swing hitting those little shots. Because you still have to square up the club face and do everything. It's just you're going a little slower and not going to get as tired. And hopefully you get good feedback on those shorter shots. Should I try
to slow down my swing, or is it much more deliberate swing when I'm going half or three-quarter?
Well, I've had I like taking a little half backswing, but I do have some people that sounds like you that have a little trouble with the timing when they shorten it up. Mm-hmm. So those people, I just have you take a full swing, but just no power. Just kind of a long, lazy swing to throw a 50-yard shot up in the air. So I try to work with people. You know, I don't have a set swing, because I know not everything's going to work for the same person, for each person. So I've had a few students that we had to do the long, lazy swing for some of those.
And explain that. I think that's intriguing.
Just full swing, but no power. You know, you're just kind of full swing and it's smooth.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That way you're not having to, because a lot of guys, you start taking that halfway back and your timing, unless you practice that, it gets messed up.
Yeah.
Plus, I've got to take it back real slow. If I get quick with that half backswing, then I get out of whack. But if I go real slow on that backswing and kind of gather myself, then I can really feel myself accelerate through on those. Mm-hmm. And with that full finish, you should be able to throw a high shot in there. High finish, high shot.
I also have noticed that when I try to take a half swing, that I put more of my knees and my body and sway into it. I'm just not as consistent with my full, with the half swing as I will be with my full swing. How can I prevent all that extra body movement practice? But what would you recommend?
Well, you might do a drill where you put your feet together and just kind of where your knees are almost touching, to where if you sway, you're going to fall right over.
Good.
Otherwise, I would try to keep, I try to keep those 50, 75-yard shots as close to my full swing. Same ball position, same width. The only thing I'm changing is the length of my backswing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas some people are going to change ball position, maybe change swing. I think we need to keep it as simple as we can as close to your full swing. So we're just learning one setup and keeping that consistent.
Do you find that it's more advantageous to carry a multitude of wedges in your bag versus a bunch of fairway woods? Do you think that you can make those adjustments on your distance instead of with a bunch of wedges, but with your swing?
Nowadays I think you need to put more wedges in your bag, just because of the ball going farther. I think we have more of those shots nowadays.
While going farther on your drive.
Yes. Whereas I don't think we need as many long irons. I'd rather have somebody have that ability to have those extra shots around the green.
And with the high MOI drivers, you're getting more opportunities to either be in the fairway or near the fairway. That you can. It seems like you're making more shots at 150 in than ever before, huh?
Right, or even 100 yards in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of these kids, that's all they got left after they smash it down there.
Yeah.
They got under 100 yards. They need 4 wedges.
Wow.
Especially with the companies, a pitching wedge nowadays is basically a 9-iron in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
They've really tweaked the wedges to where you go from pitching wedge to a sand wedge nowadays, you could have a 12-degree gap in there. You could go from 46 to 56, or some of them are even down to 44 degrees.
On the pitching wedge?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're jumping, that's too big of a gap for a shot you're almost going to have on every hole. 80 to 110 yards. So I think those are really important nowadays, and plus some of sand shots. When I teach sand shots, I teach one technique, and we use different clubs depending on how much roll you want on it.
Let's talk about that drill. Actually, that was my next question, is let's talk about getting out of the sand.
Okay. We learned one technique. Sand, I do the same as a lob shot. So I kill 2 birds with 1 stone there. And there was same as a lob shot, so open club face, open stance. And we want to hit behind the ball on purpose in the sand. So there's 2 things I do to make sure that I hit behind the ball on purpose. One is I play the ball forward in my stance. And the other is I will dig my feet into the sand, shift them back and forth to build a good stance and base. Which, while I'm doing that, I'm actually lowering myself an inch or 2 into the sand. So that alone, those 2 things are going to, hopefully my mistake will be fast, not thin.
Right.
Because I can show people, and I show them in lessons, if you have an open club face to start with, where the bounce is hitting, you can hit 8 inches behind the golf ball and it still comes out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so now you're digging yourself in. You've got an open stance, an open club face, balls up in the front of your stance. Where's your weight shift at address, and then your weight shift on your swing?
I just use a normal full swing.
Really?
Yep. Transfer weight, swing through, throw the sand onto the greens. The last thing I'm thinking is throwing sand out, because that's what's pushing the ball out. There are some people, I don't think about it, but some people need to actually favor a little more weight on their left foot just to keep them still in there, not to have them moving too much, and to get them a little better angle of attack. Some people have to think about that for chipping and sand. Not something I think about, but some people, to get that little better shaft angle and get them where the club is actually getting down on it, need to lean into it. But that each person's separate. It's different there. So.
And that's why when you work with somebody, you can see what their tendencies are, and then you can adjust that way.
Yeah, women, especially in the sand, we have to try, different laying open of the faces. The women just have a tough time generating a lot of club head speed in there, which you need for sand, to splash that, the nice chunk of sand out. So sometimes I have to square up the face a little on the ladies. But I just don't see as much consistency there. The men pretty much, have strong enough swings. I can just teach one technique there. And, but that's something, you need to spend time.
What do you see as the most consistent mistake that people make coming out of the sand?
Most common I see is they don't have the face laid open to where the bounce is working for them. They have the face square to where the leading edge actually hits, and then the club is digging. Whereas rather than sliding through the sand when the bounce works.
Oh. So you need the bounce to be what's cutting through the sand, not the leading edge.
Right. The only time you'd want that face square to shut and digging would be when you had a buried ball.
Right.
Because then you need the club to get down under it.
Right.
But most people, they have that digging, and then club just stops there, so they can't generate any acceleration through there to even throw the sand out. And that's usually the first thing I do with my students is I have them just get in and hit sand. They got to be throwing that sand out over the lip before they're ever going to be able to push a ball.
Right.
With that sand over the lip. And then, I think, that's the last thing I think is just throw the sand out. Don't think about the ball. You're going to think about that, you probably hit it.
Yeah, someone once said to me that you want to get the sand halfway to the cup.
Right, or flying over the lips, what I wanted, or getting onto the green. Yeah, because wherever that sand goes is exactly where your ball goes.
So you want to get a lot of sand out of there?
I want to hit fat, on purpose. And, if you want a short shot out of the sand, you take more sand.
Oh, not less swing, more sand?
Right. Or just a steeper angle, or change club. If you want to go shorter, I use my 60. If I want to roll a long way.
But you don't have the bounce with the 60.
I have less bounce on my 60. I have good bounce on my sand wedge.
Right.
I think you need both. I think you need one without bounce, which I would want it on my 60 because that would be the one you'd probably be laying open if you had to.
Right.
And then I want a good bounce on my sand wedge in case I get in fluffy sand. But I'll go all the way down to my 7-iron out of the sand. Laying it open, chunking it out, it shoots out low and they'll run 30 yards, where if I have a long bunker shot, rather than trying to hit closer to the ball, which is why the 50-yard bunker shot's the hardest in the game, because you got to almost skull it. Mm-hmm. But so some guys, try to take less sand when they want the ball to go farther.
It seems to me like watching the U.S. Open and tournament rounds that the pros will try to get to the sand as opposed to getting into the rough. I mean, if they're gonna miss, they'd rather miss in the sand than in tall grass. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Nowadays, those guys are spoiled. Bunkers are always raked. Their sand is very consistent from one week to another. You know, whereas like you and I, we got wet sand one time, gray sand the next. Those guys are spoiled. Whereas in the rough, they can't put the spin on it. They don't have control over it.
Do you think that a big problem with amateurs coming out of the sand is just fear?
Oh, yeah. That's where you need to spend some time to where you get over, the fear. You're thinking more about the technique and where you want the ball to land than, oh boy, don't do this, don't do that. Because, you just need to. I was actually, at one point in my career, I was a horrible bunker player. And I must have spent 200 or 300 hours in the sand when I played down in Australia. And actually, I'm pretty good out of the sand now. But that came with work.
My son said to me the other day, we were playing, and he goes, you like playing out. You like that when you hit in the sand. It's not so much that I like it, but I find it a challenge. It's an entertaining challenge to me. I don't go, oh, no, I'm going to, it's like the only reason I'm upset is I missed the green and I'm in the sand, but it's not something I try to approach it where I'm not terrified. I'm not freaked out about it. I see it as an entertaining challenge that I want to attack. And I have fairly decent success with it, I think, because
of your attitude. Yeah, you're looking, whereas most people are walking in there thinking, oh, you sculled the last one. Don't leave it in. Thinking wrong. But you say you're thinking positive before you even get in there.
Except, of course, when I try to get out and I'm still in. Then all of a sudden everything speeds up, the attitude drops, and the score goes up.
Well, that's why we need to, when you get in trouble, we need to get out of trouble right away. Otherwise, you start speeding up so fast out there, you make bad decisions.
Right.
If you have a good 100 yards and in, you can take your medicine ball. You can punch it out to 80 to 75 and have confidence that, hey, if I don't get this up and down, the worst I'm going to make is a bogey. Because we can make up a bogey with one good shot. Whereas if you make a double or a triple, that's going to take 4 or 5 good holes in a row to make up for that one hole. Well, you make 2 doubles or double and a triple, you're running out of holes in 18 holes to make up for that. With bogeys, you can make that up in 1 hole. So when we get in trouble, if you have a good short game, you can take your medicine and play safe and know that the worst you're going to make is a bogey, but you can make up for that somewhere in the round. And one thing I wanted to say, first part of this 100 yards and in that you have to get is putting. That consumes 40 to 45% of your score, and that's for a better player. It's probably even higher for the higher a handicap. And the secret to good putting is an abundance of practice. But each person has to develop a putting style and a technique capable of converting putts 10 feet and in. You don't need to make 20-footers and 30-footers, but we need to make those putts 10 feet and in.
It always amazes me to go out to the practice putting green and see people just hitting 30 and 40-foot putts and not putting at 3 feet, just getting their stroke and getting comfortable with that.
Well, that's all I do when I get to a course is hit the 30, 40-footers, trying to get a feel for the speed of those greens that day.
Okay.
Most people will go up and do the opposite, throw them right down by the hole and hit 4 or 5-footers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not helping them with speed. Plus, I don't want to miss some of those before I even get out there. Yeah, instead of hitting balls and going to the range, I go and hit 30, 40-foot putts, and if you can hit a few chip shots just to see how hard the greens are and how much roll you're getting, I think that's more important than warming up, because most guys will warm up, hit the first green and 2 in regulation, and then 3-putt.
Mm-hmm.
And you're done the rest of the day. You're going to be doubting the speed. Plus, speed is going to determine the break. If you don't have good speed, even if you're reading the green's perfect, they're not going to go in. So speed is really the first thing you need to develop, is good speed, so that your line you're reading makes sense. And you shouldn't be 3-putting if you have good speed.
This is all great advice, Mike. I really appreciate this time that you've spent with us. I've learned a ton, and I am ready to go back out and see if I can make it work for myself. It's great talking to you.
Thank you.